Hello everyone. In today's short video, we are going to cover what are child selectors in CSS and how to actually use them using SCSS. So if you haven't heard of SCSS, then SCSS is basically a way of writing CSS, which is a bit different but a bit more advanced and little easier to code when the project is complicated. So today we are going to see how to use size selectors when we are using SCSS syntax. Now let's say I have a div here with a child div with a paragraph as some content and another paragraph with content as second content, and we have a body tag here with usual text align, center and font size, and we have the container class selected for this div. Let's say there is a scenario where I cannot add a class to this p tag, like I cannot go ahead and add a class here. Now a typical scenario where this happens is, let's say you are using some external library for building some kind of UI in your code, and you don't have access to those child elements which are rendered by the library, and you just have this parent container by which you are trying to render some content from the library. Let's say you are rendering a calendar view, you are rendering date time picker, or some kind of let's say some kind of story UI, anything where a library does not have a built-in option for overriding the class names. In that case, what can we do instead of going for complicated JavaScript hacks? So for that, what we can do is we can use something called as child selectors. Now let's say I have a container class here. Now if I want to select this div here, what I will do is I will write front arrow and div. This will select this child div first. Next, I want to select this paragraph tag, right? So what I can do is I can write curly brackets and I can select this paragraph tag. Now if I apply some color here, so let's say I go ahead and apply a color as red. Now as you can see, both of these elements turned red, and the reason why this happened was because we first selected this child div using this arrow selector, then we selected the next child paragraph tag here, and then we added some color. Now let's say there is a even more complicated requirement where I just want to add color to this first or second element. How do I do that? So for that, what we can do is we can have a first child syntax here. So first child is a CSS selector by which you can select the first child of the p tag. So first child is first dash child, and if I go for p first dash child like this, then the color red is applied to the first element. Let's say now there is a requirement that I want to add this element to the second element. Now there is nothing called as second child in CSS, because how much more further can we go? Let's say there is 40th child. Obviously I cannot go for 40th child writing here, and CSS developers cannot have that kind of leisure to write all those kind of custom classes, right? So for that, what CSS team has done is they have given another selector which is called as endChild, and in endChild we can specify the index of the child which we want to apply the properties to. Let's say I want to apply this property to the second child. In that case, I will pass the index to, and my second child will get applied the CSS property. Now if I change the index to 1, then the first element will get applied the red color. So this is how we can use child selectors to apply CSS properties to child elements of a particular HTML content. Now, as I mentioned, this is a specific use case which needs to be done only when there is no way where this inner HTML is editable or controllable by your end. Like as I mentioned, if you are using some external libraries as such. Now, if you want to reduce the code which you are writing here, in that case, what you can do is I think we can remove this curly brackets from the parent div, and we can bring this p to the same line. Even this kind of syntax works, and I think if I remove this curly bracket from here as well, even that will work. So if I keep the statement like this, even in this case, the syntax will work for the first child and second child as well. Other than that, I think we also have last child syntax by which we can access the last child of the p. Now when I mean by last child is, the last child refers to the paragraph element's last node. We are not speaking like the child element of this p tag. We are speaking about this p element itself. For example, if I remove this p tag, and if I want to apply any kind of property to this div, let's say I have a div here and I have another div below this div as well, and there is some content here, let's say tertiary content. And let me just reduce the font size a bit so that tertiary content is visible as well. So let's say there is some tertiary content here and I want to Now access this second div and I want to apply the properties on this tertiary content. So how do I do that? In that case, what I will do is I will obviously not apply to the p tag. I will select that. If I select the div tags here, then all those elements will get the color red. If I want to select this second div from here, what I will do is I will write div nth child and pass the index as 2. In that case, only the second div in this hierarchy will get the tertiary content or the red color here. Similarly, if I go for index as 1, then these two elements will get color red because this is a parent element of this p tags. So basically, whenever we are selecting any kind of child here, that means that the element node which we are trying to select, like this n child refers or connects to this div element. So in this div hierarchy, whichever element you want to select, we can select that using n child. So that is briefly how child selectors works in SCSS. And I think in the CSS syntax as well, the syntax is same. So this is a Stack Overflow link by which you can refer to. So I think this was SAS and command child selector. And here you can see how you can do it using normal CSS, using SAS syntax, and using SCSS syntax as well. In case of CSS, let's say if I have a ID of foo or a class of foo, then I will go for this arrow syntax like this, and I will select the last element using nchild. Similarly, in case of SCSS, as we just saw, we use arrow selectors to select the children elements, and then we apply properties to the last child nodes. And that basically covers child selectors in SCSS. I hope this video was useful to all, and if you found this video useful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for understanding few more such interesting concepts in the future. Goodbye.